I kicked my unemployed brother and his pregnant girlfriend out of my house after they insulted my disabled husband, who was still recovering from a terrible accident. 28F, know this might sound harsh, but hear me out. My younger brother, 24M, was always treated as the golden child in our Asian family, while my older sister and I had to work harder for everything. Our father passed away just before my brother graduated high school, and our mother decided that my sister and I should pay for his college tuition, since our father had covered ours. For context, I don't make a fortune. My income is above average, but I work grueling hours as a medical resident, and with today's economy, money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. My husband's story. I'm married to an incredible man, 28M, someone I've known since middle school. A tragic accident nearly took his life, leaving him in a coma for 2 weeks and stripping him of almost all his motor skills. I made a promise that if he woke up, I'd marry him, and I did. The accident cost him his job, his active lifestyle, and his sense of independence. While he still has income from investments and a rental property his wealthy parents gifted him, the loss hit him hard, depression took hold, and he struggled to find purpose for nearly a year as he relearned how to walk. Even now, he can't stand or move for long periods without his cane. But in the past year, I've seen sparks of joy return to his life, through cooking and baking. He dove headfirst into it, so much so that we revamped our kitchen to accommodate his passion. He's now researching how to start his own bakery, and while I may have eaten sourdough bread for 3 weeks straight, I love seeing him happy again. My brother moves in. My brother, meanwhile, accidentally got his girlfriend pregnant. He's been job hunting since graduating 2 years ago, but his situation is largely his own doing. Right after college, he launched a business, burning through most of our father's inheritance before it inevitably failed. To make matters worse, he also spent my sister's share of the inheritance, which destroyed their relationship. Even my mother isn't thrilled about his situation, though she still coddles him. That's why she asked me, her newlywed daughter, to let my brother and his girlfriend stay with us while he searched for a job. Since I live in a big city, she assumed it would increase his chances of employment. I discussed it with my husband, and being the generous person he is, he offered to remodel one of his rental properties for them. They could move in once it was ready and wouldn't have to pay rent until my brother found work. In the meantime, they could stay in our guest room. Looking back, I should have seen the disaster coming. The nightmare begins. They moved in before Christmas and immediately did the bare minimum. They washed only their small dishes, leaving pots and pans for us. They did their own laundry but contributed nothing else. They raided our pantry and fridge without restocking, and some days, I didn't even get to taste my husband's baked goods because they ate the ones he set aside for me. Even after pulling 2 consecutive shifts at the hospital, I'd come home to a sink full of dishes that I knew my husband hadn't used. Meanwhile, my husband, who still struggles with mobility, was limping around, taking out the trash and doing chores while they did nothing. I finally confronted them, gently putting it like this: "Bro, you won't get a job if you can't even take out the trash. And sis, I get that you're pregnant, but you can at least wash the dishes you use. You both have 2 hands, help out with the cooking utensils. Teamwork makes the dream work." They improved slightly. Now, they at least washed all their dishes, though they never put them away. But hey, baby steps. The breaking point. During Chinese New Year, my mother and older sister visited. My husband went all out, cooking an elaborate meal, while I deep cleaned the house and prepared the extra guest room. That's when I realized the second floor, where my brother and his girlfriend stayed, hadn't been vacuumed in ages. They didn't emerge from their room until my family arrived. We exchanged greetings, gave my mother her New Year's bow, and sat down for dinner. And then, my brother decided to open his mouth. With unearned confidence, he declared that it was time for my husband to get a real job since he could walk now. He compared himself, saying he was working hard to find a job, implying my husband wasn't. Then, with a casual, "No offense," as if that made it better, he called my husband's passion for cooking weird for someone his size, 6 feet 3 inches. His girlfriend laughed and added that my husband seemed more feminine than she was because he cooked and took care of the house. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the final straw. If being the standard was anything to go by, my brother and his girlfriend even had the nerve to ask my husband why he was still at home after all these years since his accident. They implied that I would leave him soon if he continued to stay cooped up in the house. Then, as if that wasn't enough, She whined about how my husband always just smiled at them and never responded. I think even my brother realized how badly his girlfriend had messed up because he quickly backpedaled, claiming it had only happened once or twice. But by then, it was too late. I stood up, took both of their plates, and told them to pack their things and leave. I couldn't even look at my husband. I was furious and ashamed of them. It took all the self-control I had not to curse them out right then and there. They tried to defend themselves, saying I was being overly sensitive about harmless comments. My mother jumped in, trying to defuse the situation, claiming that my brother and his girlfriend meant well, that their comments came from a good place, and even pointed out that my husband didn't seem offended. She asked why I was ruining a good day, but I ignored her. I handed them my car keys, telling them to leave as soon as possible. My brother and his girlfriend left with my older sister, giving my husband a half-hearted apology on the way out. My sister said they stayed at a motel that night before returning to my mother's house the next day. My sister later came to collect my brother's things. She laughed at the situation and was the only one who thought I'd done the right thing. My husband said he was grateful for my support, but he didn't take their comments to heart, knowing how much I love him and what he does. He suggested I might have been a little harsh, though. Later, my mother called to say their words weren't a good enough reason to kick out my struggling brother and his pregnant girlfriend, emphasizing the pregnant part. She said I could have just scolded him the same way I did about the dishes. Yep, he tattled about that too. I'm still convinced I wasn't wrong and that I didn't overreact, but I'll admit, I'm still angry and a little conflicted. Even my husband was so calm about the whole thing. Not the asshole. Your brother stole the inheritance. He's a thief, a lazy person who knocked up his girlfriend, doesn't work, and disrespects your home and your husband while living there for free. You were way too kind and let this go on for too long. Your actions had consequences. Never help him again, he's entitled, and your mother is enabling him. Now that I think about it, you're absolutely right. I've been enabling him, and that ends now. Lesson learned. Never again. Thanks for your response. NTA, good for you for standing up for your husband. Hopefully, this will teach your lazy brother and his girlfriend a lesson. They need to take responsibility, especially after getting pregnant and acting like they're entitled to live off you. I should clarify, my brother didn't take my car. My sister did, and she drove it to a motel. The car is safe in my garage, and she even filled the gas tank. NTA, your mom can take them in if she's so invested. Protect your space and your immediate family, which is your husband. Having toxic people around could undo all the progress he's made. Imagine what they say to him when you're not around. That's my biggest worry too. I actually asked my husband if they'd said anything behind my back when I wasn't around. He told me he hadn't said much, but he did tell them off once, kind of. He said it in a laughing tone, but what he said was pretty scathing. He thinks that's why my brother brought it up during dinner. Hello, I never thought I'd be writing an update to this story. I was surprised when I woke up this morning to find so many responses, and I want to thank everyone for reading and offering support. My husband and I actually sat down and read all the responses together. He was really grateful for the kind words and even blushed when people called him a saint. Don't tell him I said that, though. It was cute. I tried replying to everyone, but after an hour, I gave up. My fingers just couldn't keep up with all the replies. This post will be mostly explanations. I've seen a lot of recurring questions, so I want to address them here. Did I get my car back? No, my brother never took the car. My sister took it, drove it to a motel, and then brought it back. It's safe and sound in my garage now, and she even filled up the gas tank. Why did I let him stay in my house? Honestly, I'm not very close to my family, for reasons that may be obvious given the situation. I went to a boarding school, so I was out of the house by the time I was in high school. During college, I barely came home, just for New Year, and even then, it was only for a week or less. I kept my contact with them minimal. I mostly knew my brother as a spoiled brat, someone my mother coddled. After our father passed away, he became more wary of me because I forced him to apologize whenever he'd done something wrong. That's why I didn't expect him to say anything so outrageous. Before my mother asked me to let him stay, she had actually asked me to fund his wedding. That was a hard no. So, to avoid her constant nagging, I agreed to let him stay until he got a job. In hindsight, that was one of my biggest mistakes. Why did I pay his tuition? Why did I let him take my share of the inheritance? I didn't exactly pay for his tuition directly. As I mentioned earlier, Our father left an inheritance, and my brother used a portion of that for his education. I told my mother to use my share of the inheritance to pay my brother's tuition. My reasoning at the time was simple: if I ever touched that money, she'd ask for something in return. So, I decided it wasn't worth it. If she believed that everything was transactional, then so be it. I didn't consider that money mine, so I didn't feel like I was losing anything. However, after my brother got into college, I had to avoid my family for a while because the inheritance was intended to fund our weddings. My mother quickly gave in after I went MIA. I did sit my brother down and made him apologize, though. He promised to pay it back to our oldest sister after his business ventures failed. In hindsight, it wasn't really my place to forgive or scold him. I'd consented to my mother using my share, so I should have at least told him to pay my sister back directly. On my husband's spine. Some of you questioned why my husband didn't seem to step up. Well, let me clear that up. My husband's got titanium in his spine, literally and figuratively. Kidding, but he's tougher than you think. I didn't go into much detail about that part because my post was focused on the issue at hand, not the aftermath or my husband's perspective. After the dinner, I asked him why he didn't speak up, especially when my brother and his girlfriend insulted him. He was pretty offended that I believed they hadn't responded to him. Turns out, he did tell them off during New Year when I was on the phone. He said something like, "Bro, I'm still richer than you even if we're both unemployed. I've got a doctor for a wife who proposed to me when all I could do was blink. My life is fine, just get a job." That's me rephrasing. He couldn't exactly remember his exact words. He said he was laughing when he said it, so maybe my brother didn't take him seriously, but that could explain why my brother later said those things during dinner. Honestly, imagining my husband saying that is kind of scary. Laughing just makes it worse. Kind of hot, though, but that's TMI. As for why he didn't bring it up to me, he didn't take it to heart and was too lazy to mention it. Plus, he compared my brother and his girlfriend to the husky next door, which, by the way, is a very handsome dog. Their nature is what it is, why bother? I told him to let me know next time someone disrespects him, though. I'd like to finally put my elementary school taekwondo skills to use. I only got to yellow belt, so don't expect much. I think he's happier about what I did than he lets on, though. Don't ask me why. On enabling my brother. As I mentioned in a previous reply, I realized that avoiding my family so much has probably contributed to enabling my brother. That's on me. I know I'm not his parent, so it's not my responsibility to parent him, but I take accountability for not being tougher on him while growing up. That's likely why he has some screws loose. Closing thoughts. Now, it's been a week since Chinese New Year, CNY, and things have calmed down. The most notable thing is that I've blocked both my mother and my brother on my and my husband's phones, with his consent. Of course, this happened after my mother tried to contact him yesterday about the room we plan to renovate. The renovation is still happening, but my husband decided to rent it out to someone else later on. I blocked my mother on his phone without responding when he told me about it. He kept asking if it was okay to cut off my family completely, but he reassured me that he's not affected by it at all. I was second-guessing myself for a bit, but with the strength of my husband's ancestors, and my own, I've firmly made my decision. Now, I'll think of my mother and brother like that annoying strand of hair you find on your butt, there, but unnecessary. It'll feel even better after plucking it. I haven't bothered to ask about my brother and his girlfriend, and honestly, it's not my problem anymore. I did hear my mother called me crazy for prioritizing my husband over my family, but, well, I'm her daughter, so you can probably guess where I get that from. Relationship reflection. My husband and I had lots of conversations after reading my previous post, talking through each other's perspectives. I apologized again and asked if he ever thought about leaving me after the whole fiasco, which I know was a lot for him. He, in turn, asked if I remembered telling him to just get fat after proposing with a ring that was too big. It was the same size as our couple ring, totally an Asian thing. By the way, don't judge me. A few days after he woke up, he said, "If I took a step forward to stay with you when I could do absolutely nothing, why would I think about leaving you now that I'm doing everything I can to stand by you? I might make mistakes, and it might not be enough for others, but it's enough for me. We can always fix it." Like how he ate so much throughout his recovery to get that ring on his finger. He'll pick up my slack. So, what's the problem? I bawled, kidding, not really, and am currently taking sick leave because my eyes are super swollen. Thanks for reading. LOL, kidding again. Final thoughts. I know I talk a lot, but the last thing I want to say is, if you find yourself in a similar situation, know that it's normal to struggle to stand up for yourself. It's okay if it takes some time. Navigating difficult situations isn't easy, but if you decide to face them, that's what adds to your worth as a person. You make mistakes, you fix them, and you learn from them. It's easier said than done, and that's why it's something to be proud of. So, keep your chin up and hang in there. Thanks again for reading, and I hope you all have a wonderful year ahead.